Today's video race of the day is going to be Tampa, race 5 on December the 1st, starting the new month and a new season at Tampa. Also, I'll go a little bit deeper in this race, and I want to touch base on another race, race 8, just to show you some things. That'll be quick, but this race will do a little bit deeper dive. It's a maiden claiming race, 16,000. Not really exciting, hard to separate horses, but I think we got some things that maybe can help us do that in both the plot and notes. So we're going to start with looking at the header from the plot. The plot fits a green. That's good. Contention seems about average, and the speed rating seems a little low. So just on first glance, I would say that would favor horses in quadrant 1 or tipping over in quadrant 1. So that would include a bunch of horses here, actually. The 1, the 4, the 2 also kind of hovers. The 3 and the 6 kind of hovers too. So actually the 6 is in there. So you see as I go through the horses on the table, their plot position highlights in both. So it looks like there's a bunch of horses that have a chance here. The thing to note, though, is you look at the table, you see a bunch of horses coming off layoffs. So we're going to have to assess form going to the grid because looking at the plot, their form may be a little bit dated here. So we just need to pay attention to that. Their plot information. We're basically plotting them based on past information, and that information may be a little bit dated and stale because of the layoffs these horses come out. So could be a little bit of a tricky race, and definitely a race that we don't want to be looking at taking any kind of a short price. So let's go over to the grid. I'm going to do a quick horse by horse analysis. I'm going to start with the number 1, Truly Ambitious. You see this horse has done a lot of racing on the turf and synthetic. I'm going to just filter for his dirt races only, and they haven't been very good. His best race, he was lone, had weather that day. It was only a 5 furlong race that was off the turf, so we always think those races are a little bit weaker. This horse really doesn't jump off in the form for us. Again, looking at that quadrant 1, looks to be a little bit contentious, and so that might be a problem for him, especially now that he's asked to go 6 furlongs. So that's the 1. Let's switch over to the 2. And this horse looked a little bit interesting. I mean, typically this is a horse you want to stay away from because look at all the chances he's had. Some 25 odd chances to break his maiden, hasn't been able to do it. But okay, the last race was at the Meadowlands, and we got a better than looked effort out of him, and he ran a 67. And when you start really comparing that 67 with other Optix figs in this race, this horse looks pretty strong. And he looks pretty consistent. Yeah, you notice he's 67, 67, 64. He kind of runs that range. He's capable of 77. He popped one time at that, with that kind of effort. Let's see his dirt sprints because he's kind of routed. He sprinted. His dirt sprints, again, he's run 66, 68, 67, 67. And I'm going to show you, let's just look at the last 45 days of the horses in this race and look what the figures are. I mean, so his 67 essentially towers it over. Let's break it out. Let's go 90 days. And it still compares well. I mean, you got one horse here that ran a 72. But again, just looking at recent form and everything, he will be a competitive horse in this race. And when you start thinking about, like, traditionally people will probably look at all those run lines and be against them, like 0 for 25. Sometimes people just cross those horses out. But he might have found a group here. And you could see if you went back to his plot, there's no negatives to his plot. He plots pretty well. Again, it all depends on how some of these horses come back in quadrant 1. But he's sitting right on the border there. So I think this horse is a contender at the morning line of 6-1, coming off the better than looked effort. And, I think what I'm seeing is kind of a speed figure advantage. Just to go to the V bars, you can see his speed figures kind of line up with the 3 and the 4, who also seem to be pretty good. So number 2 is really rates as a contender for us in this race. So let's go and look at some of the others. Again, I think we're going to be looking at horses that are coming off layoffs. The 3 ran, his best race at Delaware, around a 72, in around this level. It's changed barns. It's going to be bet. You see his morning line of 9-5. just not a horse I could get excited about because he's got the same issue in terms of piling up losses. And if you just kind of cross off that one speed figure, his other speed figures don't align up other than his debut. So uh, he's run okay, gets over this track a little bit, but this is not a horse I want to be taking a short price off another layoff and a trainer change that we're not can't really evaluate at this point in time. So that's the 3. The 4, another layoff horse. And here's a thing I really don't like: horses that have a layoff and then have another layoff. That's kind of negative for me. It's just something's not right there. So this horse, again, looks a little bit competitive in numbers too, but just don't know how to evaluate him off what I would call a double layoff. Now he does get Ferrer, who's probably one of the top riders there, but again, another horse I don't want to be taking in this race at 5-2. So you can see I'm just pretty much eliminating horses, especially at shorter prices. And not to say, like when we were talking about the 2 is a horse that I love, but it's really a horse I can tolerate at the price. Okay. So you look at number 5. This horse hadn't run in a long time, came back, but I mean, he's just in no running. Now he's getting a drop again. Just don't, you know, this is a horse though, just hasn't shown much. So it'd be hard to kind of take this horse. The 6 is another horse that's been running on grass the last 2 races. But if you look at his 2 dirt races, pretty poor. So I don't know if the move to turf is his current form or, it's just that he likes grass better. Hard to tell at this point. But he is cutting back too to a dirt race. I mean, he's cutting back in distance too from 8.5 to 6. And he's coming off a 257-day layoff. Again, he's another horse. He's 4-1 in the morning. He's probably be the second or third choice too. So, it all depends on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish here. But probably be too short for me in terms of price. The 7, another grass horse, and you can see another horse where I just don't like the spacing, and he hasn't run any figure near like some of the others in here. So this is a horse that I'm not backing. And then the 8. The one time, I mean, maybe you forget he went long turf. Maybe you can forgive some of that. But the problem here is he didn't get bet a nickel in his debut. No push. I'll look at his workouts just to see if maybe he's woke up in the morning. Doesn't look like it. His works look slow. Not a horse I want to take. So really, by process of elimination here, it's not that I'm liking anybody in a crummy race. I'm just thinking the 2 might be of value, especially if he gets overlooked because of the number of losses he's piled up and kind of a low profile trainer. In this race, you want to, take your shots because the horses aren't that good and anything can happen. So for me, in this race, I kind of are leaning on the 2, especially if you're getting anywhere near 5-1 or above. I think that's good value in this race. Number 5 at Tampa. I just want to quickly, I'm not going to go into the detail I did in this last race, but just want to look at race 8 because I just thought that the squares look pretty good in race 8 at Tampa. It's a turf race, and you could just visually it just looks like the circles are all kind of together. We know the circles don't finish as well as the squares. You got 3 squares that kind of stand out: the 1, the 9, and the 10. And I just thought they would kind of work, especially when I started looking at their prices of 8-1, 15-1, and 6-1. I just thought that might be interesting if you can get anything near. I just don't know how close the morning line guy gets to final odds at Tampa, but just something that I thought was interesting. And then I just wanted to point out that the 3 of those horses and a little subtle difference. So they're all coming off layoffs, and Osprey number 1 is coming off a 178-day layoff. He really hasn't done that before, so this is a horse that I might need a race now. Back in the O'Connell barn, she's good in Tampa. So, and Camacho takes the ride. So some things to like, but that's a pretty big layoff. So don't know exactly what kind of horse you're getting in there. The 9 and the 10 also have legs, but notice a couple of things different. This is what I love about the grid. It actually puts the horses when they get scratched out of race in there, So the number 9 Robinson was intended to run in Indiana Grand on the 19th of October. So the layoff doesn't look as bad because this horse was intended to run and the race came off because it got switched to the dirt. So I feel a little bit better about that when I'm looking and trying to compare and contrast layoffs. I say this horse really wasn't laid off. The horse was ready to run. Weather changed it, and so that's an important point. And the same thing with the 10. I mean, this horse actually the last two races got scratched off, so that's something to monitor. Comes back here. There is a trainer change, with the circuit switch, and this horse kind of rates as a contender. And again, that layoff, not as bad as it looks based on the circumstances. So in this race, again, I would just ask you to dig a little bit deeper into this race, but just on surface, the 1, 9, 10 squares, just intrigue me in a race filled with a bunch of circles. It looks like those three probably have the best late kick relative to the field. And just, based on the run styles, they may be a little bit, run styles maybe a little bit more slanted to early pace. You can see the 3, 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 kind of fill those spots, while the 2, 8, 9, 10 are kind of on the other side. So that's it for me. Video race of the day, John Doyle again. Check us out at OptixEQ.com. We got a lot of products. We got some good stuff coming this weekend. We got the green report. We go into how to apply really optics notes and take advantage of that great product. So thanks for listening.